Good morning, Community Church. So good to see you guys here today. Dave is down speaking in the Bergs at our second campus today, so he asked if I would speak up here in Mount Pocono, and I feel so honored that he would share his pulpit with me, so I'm excited to be with you guys today. So how are you guys doing on the Daniel fast? How's that going? One weekend, you guys doing good? I know, it feels good to eat healthy. It's the healthiest I've eaten, I don't even know how long. But we've been, eating so clean, and it's a new year, and so we've been trying to make some better choices and different things. And so we decided that we were gonna make a huge life change and join the gym. Has anybody else joined the gym here in January? I've seen some of you guys over there at Planet Fitness, right? So, so I used to I do exercise periodically. I'll run for 3 days and then not run for 3 months. Anybody like that? Get all gung-ho about it, buy a new outfit, and then I'm out after 3 days. But this time, this is gonna be different, right? I'm hoping. I'm really trying. And Dave and I are doing it together, so cheering each other on. I'm a little awkward at the gym. You guys, I don't know, if you notice that about me, I'll probably trip out in the hallway at some point today, so be looking for that. But that happens, and so at the gym, if you're there and I'm working out, you'll probably be entertained. I know I entertain Dave quite a lot, so it's kind of fun. But the first day we went, I got on this one machine, and it was for legs, and I was like, I can totally do this extra weight. I know I can. I run once in a while, and I go up and down stairs 50 times a day. So I probably have some leg strength, I'm pretty sure. So I plug it in all ready to go, and I go to do the first pump, and I was like, this is not happening. I cannot. Too much weight. You guys ever been there? You thought you could manage a heavier weight than you can actually manage, and so I had to kind of reel it back and get a little bit of perspective. But we're doing a series right now that we are talking about the soul, not the body. And sometimes we do that in life, where we think we can take on a heavy weight, but it ends up crushing us physically. So this series that we're doing is called Soul Detox, and it's based off of a thought out of a book called Soul Detox, written by Craig Rochelle. And the thought is this: we are not a body with a soul, but we are a soul with a body. And if I asked you guys today, what is the condition of your soul? I bet a lot of you would say that your soul is heavy, that right now you have a heavy soul. Or another way that you might say that is your heart feels heavy. Do any of you guys feel like that sometimes? Or perhaps you're feeling like that today. I don't know if some of you maybe have gone through some loss over this last year, or maybe you've moved and you've had to leave behind friends and family that you love and you miss them, and your soul is heavy because of that. Or maybe you're lonely, feeling like you're lacking some relationships in your life that you would really like to have. Or maybe you've lost a job or lost a spouse. Maybe you've had to bury somebody, and you guys are dealing with a heavy soul. It's a common problem today. A lot of people struggle with a heavy soul. And I read an article recently in Psychology Today about this generation, the current generation, the millennials. We've heard a lot about the millennials, right? And they were doing a study on them, and they found that millennials, ages 12 to 30, struggle a lot with a low-grade depression, like a constant low-grade depression. It's not the same as clinical depression. It's a low-grade depression. And when asked why they're depressed, they really can't give an answer. They don't really know. It's like nothing's really wrong, but nothing's really right either. And they're struggling with this. And it's interesting. This is the largest generation that's ever existed, 85 to 90 million people. They're the most educated people in history. They have the most access to information in history. But yet they struggle with this heavy soul and this soul dissatisfaction within them. And it's interesting, they're calling it the quarter life crisis. So you guys have heard of the midlife crisis, right? No, that's old news. That's so yesterday, so 2017. Now it's the quarter day crisis that they're dealing with, and they don't really know why. But what's interesting, though, is that this really isn't new for this generation. Lots of generations have dealt with this before. And King David, in his generation, he dealt with this. Thousands of years ago, he felt that feeling of a heavy soul. And we read about it in Psalms 42:5. He wrote, "Why am I so discouraged? Why is my heart so sad?" He's asking himself, why am I so sad? What is this heaviness within me? And some of you may be sitting there saying, yeah, why does my heart feel so heavy? So if you're taking some notes today, I have 3 things that you can write down and reflect on later, and I have more things you can write down later too, not just 3, but we'll start with the first 3. But there's 3 things that may be the reason, probably a good chance the reason why you have a heaviness of your soul. And the time that I've lived and the experiences that I have found that it's typically one of these 3 things, or perhaps even a combination of these 3 things. The pain from your past, the problems in your present, or the worrying about the future. These usually are the source of our heavy soul. Even Jesus went through a time of a heavy soul. He loved to go and pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. Maybe some of you have read about that. It was his favorite place to go. It was at the base of the Mount of Olives, and this was where they would gather the olives to extract the oil and make olive oil. And the process of doing that was gathering up the olives, putting them into a machine, or probably not a machine back then, but a press, and pressing them and crushing them. It's interesting because Gethsemane literally means to press, or a place of crushing. And Jesus talks about this heaviness of his soul in Mark 14:33-34. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be so deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. That's some serious, heavy soul. He understood what that meant to have a heavy soul. Some of you look back on the past and you're thinking about that all the time, or some of you are focused on what is happening right now. Some of you are trying to wrap your head around what is happening, what's going to be happening in the future. And some of us, some people will choose to cope with this in many different ways. And one way, they might take some pills to help them sleep at night, or just to help them deal with the anxiety of it. Some people will drink to try to numb the pain, to try to forget. Some people will binge watch Netflix series. Anybody ever do that, for 2-3 days? just one right after another. Whatever I can do to avoid the heavy soul. Some people, gamers, they'll sit and play video games for hours on end, right? A way to deal with the heavy soul. Some people will have affairs to try to avoid dealing with the heavy soul. Some people will sleep. They'll sleep and sleep and sleep every chance they get. Sleep right up until the last minute before they go to work. As soon as they come home, sleeping, just trying not to deal with the heavy soul. Some people like to be super busy. Tons of activity. If I'm going, then I can avoid dealing with this heavy soul that I have. So Dave and I have been married for 20 years, right? Gotta give it up. 20 years, pretty awesome. Can't believe it. It's kind of amazing. I don't know how that happened. Like blinked. But so 20 years ago, we got married. And I had always been a really healthy person, was real active in sports and stuff in high school and college, and felt pretty good and always healthy and whatnot. And so we got married, and shortly after we got married, I started to have some pretty severe health problems that then led to us having a very difficulty having children. These health problems caused a great deal of pain in my body. So I would suffer almost on a daily basis with pain, and would go from doctor to doctor, medication after medication. Nothing was fixing it. And, poor Dave, he didn't know he married this wife that was broken. Poor guy, when you get married, you don't know what you're getting into. So, till death do us part. But anyway, so we kept going forward, and he was great through it. But it was really hard. For years, I had a heaviness of the soul. I thought, God, how long do I have to suffer with this? How long does this have to burden us? How long am I going to have to just go through this? And no doctors seemed to be able to answer until we moved to Missouri to do some missions work, and I met a doctor who said, I can fix this. You don't have to be in pain anymore. He had the answers that nobody else had. He was able to bring resolution to this pain in my life, and I was so thankful for that. My point is that if you have a heavy soul, you're walking around with this heaviness, this hurt, this pain, you've carried it long enough. You don't have to live in pain anymore. You don't have to live like that anymore. You don't have to be injured anymore. Because you know why? There's a great physician in the house, and his name is Jesus, and he can bring healing to your heavy soul today. You don't have to live like that anymore. He can heal you, he can give you relief, and he can lift that heaviness from you. So let's look again at what David said in Psalms 42. Why am I so discouraged? Why is my heart so sad? But then I love this next part. So good. He goes on and he starts preaching to his soul. So even though he's like feeling discouraged and down, he's like, I'm going to start preaching to my soul. He says, I will put my hope in God. I will praise him again, my Savior and my God. You know what he's saying? He's saying, come on, soul, get with it. Quit your whining. Put your hope in God. You serve a great God who is faithful and who's going to take care of you and who's going to heal you and who's going to lift this heaviness from you. He starts preaching to his soul. And let me encourage you guys today, some of you need to start preaching to your soul. Some of you need to start telling your soul, come on, soul, quit your whining. Put your hope in God. We serve a great God. And as you're preaching to your soul, as you're telling your soul how it really is, I want you to tell your soul 3 things. I'm going to write these things down. 3 things as you're preaching to your soul. The first thing I want you to tell your soul is, remember God's faithfulness in the past. It talks about this in Lamentations 3:19 through 23. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness of the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassion never fails. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. He said, yeah, you know what? When I think about the past, the pain that I've experienced, the hurts that I've suffered, the battles that I've fought and I've lost, it makes my soul heavy. Yet this I can call to mind. This gives me hope when I think about God's great love, how his compassion never fails, how he's new every single morning, and how he's been so faithful. Great is thy faithfulness. You see, God is so good, and he's so faithful. See, we could focus on the past hurts and the pain, right? We can wallow in that, or we can focus on the faithfulness of God. Let us remember the faithfulness of God. I think about when I went to college. I had grown up in the Philippines. Many of you know that, and then Dave has mentioned that before. My parents were missionaries, and I pretty much lived there most of my growing up years. So that was my home. Those were where my family and my friends and my support group, and where I was comfortable, and it was my home. I loved it. I loved living there. But I couldn't go to college there. I had to come here to go to college. And when it was time for me to go to college, it wasn't a time when my parents could come and stay for a period of time. So basically, they packed me up, brought me to college, settled me in the dorm, and then they left me. And that was it. They flew up to the Philippines. And I was on my own. And it was really hard. I was in a culture I wasn't accustomed to as much. I wasn't as comfortable here. I didn't have the support. I was super homesick. I was very lonely. And it was really hard. And every semester, I called my parents and I said, that's it, I quit. I'm done. I'm out. I am done with college. I can't do this anymore. But then God was so faithful, and he helped me push through. And I managed to go back each semester, and I ended up getting my degree. And God was so faithful to me during those times. And during those college years, I had a couple of relationships that were fairly serious. And lucky for Dave, they ended up, breaking up, so good for him. But it was, it was heartbreaking when I was going through it, and God was very faithful to walk me through that. But after going through those couple of relationships, I was like, okay, there's nobody for me. It's done. I'm just going to be single the rest of my life, like, whatever. So I was kind of like, I'm never going to meet anybody. And no joke, as soon as I said that, it was like within a day or two, I met Dave. Isn't that funny? So God is so faithful, and he brought me Dave, and just been an amazing ride with him. But then after we got married, and I shared with you guys, I had these health problems, and then we really wanted to have children, and we were trying, and it was taking us a very long time. Years were going by. It just wasn't happening. And it was really interesting because while we were there in Missouri, a friend of ours, we had become very close. He was from Africa. He was there studying to get his doctorate, a pastor leader from Africa. And him and his wife had gone through a similar experience, had a very difficulty getting pregnant. And so he prayed over us, and then we couldn't stop getting pregnant. So it just kind of was endless after that. But, God is so faithful. He walks through those things with us. And, you can look back and have a heavy soul. We can dwell on the negative and the hardships. There's a lot of those you could focus on. Or we can focus and dwell upon the faithfulness of God. Remember the faithfulness of the past. The second thing I want to tell you, to tell your soul, is cry out to God in the present. Cry out to God in the present. It says in Psalms 142, David was saying, I pour out my complaint before him. Before him I tell my trouble. I cry to you, O Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. See, David, he was in a cave when he wrote this, and he was in desperate need because his enemy was trying to kill him. I mean, my problems seem like this big right now when I think about that. No one's trying to kill me, so that's good. It's a good day. But he was facing this. His enemies were trying to kill him, and he is just like not holding back. He is just crying out to God with everything within him. And you know what? It's okay to cry out to God. Cry out to God with your needs right now. Be honest with him. He can take it. Tell him that you're angry. Tell him that you're hurting. Tell him that you don't understand. Tell him that you need answers, and he will be there for you. And during this time of fasting and prayer, it is a great opportunity to cry out to God. We feel very vulnerable during the season of fasting and praying, and we can just be open and honest with him and cry out to him for those answers that we're seeking. So a few years ago, I was kind of going through a situation like this, not like David, different situation, but I had a very heaviness of my soul. A few years ago, I was really struggling with ministry. I was kind of struggling with the Poconos. Anybody ever struggle with the Poconos on days like this? It's cold. But I was struggling. I was really having just a really hard time with some different things that were happening. And I was crying out to God. I needed to hear from him. I needed answers from him. I needed confirmations. I needed to hear his voice. And this has been going on for a little while, and then Dave had a trip that he needed to go for some meetings in San Diego. And he said, you know what, why don't we go for a couple days early? And he knew I had been really wrestling with some stuff in my heart and everything, and so he said, let's go and just get away for a little while so you can just get with God and get some fresh perspective. So we were there over a weekend, over a Sunday, and so he decided to ask me if we wanted to go and visit the Rock Church. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. His friend Miles McPherson planted the Rock Church. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He is a former NFL football player for the San Diego Chargers, and really cool guy, so down to earth. And so it's his church, and we get there, and it's such a cool church, very similar to the feel that we have here, and loved it. It was really neat. We get into the worship service, and worship starts. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I pretty much cry every single Sunday. Anybody with me? Does anybody else cry every single Sunday? So it's not maybe necessarily anything's wrong or whatever. It's just as soon as I feel the presence of God, it's like, oh God, I'm so unworthy, you know. So anyways, we're there for this worship service, and I'm dealing with this heaviness of my soul, and I'm crying out to God, and the worship starts, and the floodgates start, and snot's flying, and tissue's flying, and Dave's like inching away from me, like I do not know this crazy woman. And I'm just crying out to God for these answers that I need in my heart and in my life. And then Miles McPherson comes out on stage, and he starts preaching, and the coolest thing happened. It was as if, I don't know if you guys have ever felt this before. In that moment, it was like I was the only person in the room. And when I think about it, every time I tell that story, like seriously, told it first service, telling it now, like gives me chills to think about it. It was as if suddenly Miles wasn't there and Jesus was standing on that stage and just nailed me between right in the forehead. Just every answer that I needed. Boom, 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 boom. And that heaviness was lifted. See, the thing is Jesus was the only one that could have the answers that I needed. Dave couldn't tell me, friends couldn't tell me, family couldn't tell me. I needed to hear from Jesus, and he met me right where I was as I was crying out to him, and he'll do the same for you. And he lifted that heaviness from me, and he'll do the same for you. He is our answer. You don't have to live with a heavy soul. He will give you relief. He will lift that from you and meet you right where you are. It's good, right? The third thing I want you to tell your soul is to trust in God's power for your future. Trust in God's power for your future. So you can trust in God. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. You can trust him. He will meet you where you are. I love the scripture. It's in a difficult time of Israel's history, and they're facing threat of war. And the prophet says this in 2 Chronicles 32, 7-8. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria and the vast army with him. For there is a greater power with us than with him. With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. So he's saying, they have their army, but it's an arm of flesh. That's all they have. We have God. We have the power of God and the power of heaven fighting our battles. What we have is greater than what they have. They have what they have, but we have something greater, guys. When you walk with God, when you accept him into your life, when you make him a part of your journey and a part of your life, you have something greater. You have a power that you can tap into, that he will meet you where you are. He will meet your needs. He will fight your battles. Yesterday, today, forever. He will be there for you for all eternity if you accept him to be a part of your life. Some of you have met my brother and my sister-in-law, Mark and Vicky. They've been here many times speaking, and they're missionaries in Africa, some of my favorite people in the entire world. They're really amazing people. About 3 months ago, we found out that Vicky has breast cancer. And this was really, really difficult news to find out. Never an easy thing to hear. And as we were processing through this, and we were talking with her about it, she's one of those women that when you talk to her, she's the one that's going through something, but then she ends up ministering to you, and you're like, wait, I was supposed to be here ministering to you, and you're like ministering to me. She just oozes encouragement. She loves the Lord so much, and they've given their life to the work of God. And she said to me, as we were talking through this, she said, here's the thing. If I live, I'm going to trust God. If I die, I'm going to trust God. Either way, I win. I win because I have God. I have an assurance on this life. I have an assurance in eternity. So no matter what, when you have God in your life, you win. He's here fighting your battles. And we pray that she's going to have complete recovery. She's doing well in her treatments, and we're believing God for that. But we have an assurance for eternity when we allow God to be in our life, fighting our battles, taking care of us, leading us, guiding us, allowing him to be a part of our plan. We need to trust him with our future.